You know that feeling you get when it's been so long since you hit some heavy numbers because you're in the off season training for a meet coming up and you see your numbers, your PRs on the board, and you doubt whether or not you can hit those again. That's where I'm at. I believe I can confidently say that everyone in the sport of powerlifting has dealt with imposter syndrome at some point. The feeling that your PRs are either unearned or unreplicatable. The feeling you get in the off season when things aren't moving the way that you want them to be moving and you don't really feel strong. It's the feeling a lot of lifters get that causes them to go off program and randomly either try to match their PR or beat their PR, even though if it's not on the platform, it might as well just be 135. Or even worse, they end up missing the numbers that they're aiming for, and they end up in some sort of spiral of depression because you're just not as strong as you used to be. But the problem with maxing out or going for a PR off cycle, off program at a random point is it's almost impossible to determine where your fatigue levels are, where your strength levels are, and where the other variables are that you've got to be dealing with in order to hit a PR. And that's assuming your coach knows what he's doing and you're training and prepping for meets correctly. Meets should be an idealized circumstance where your fatigue levels are at an all-time low, you've got some super compensation in your strength going on, and it's basically an idealized situation where you're not even loading your bars, and on paper, it's not stressful at all, even though we all know it's extremely stressful to compete. So, a random max out off program in training should be nothing like a max out on the platform when you're perfectly primed. But that doesn't stop a lot of people from going for a random PR or trying to max out whenever they feel doubtful of their progress, where they are in their program. You see, it's extremely difficult in order to lift weights regularly and lose strength. In an idealized situation, that's nearly impossible. So when people get depressed because they missed a PR attempt off program, it's not because their strength is lowered, it's because their fatigue is at an all-time high, and the only thing that they can really test out is how strong they are with the level of fatigue that they are having. And that's where my current feelings towards my own training right now comes into play. Because I'm going through a little bit of a culture shock when it comes to volume versus weight moved during training. Because you see, I switched coaches back in around November, and the new program that I'm following has a higher emphasis on hypertrophic growth of the muscle fibers and a lot more emphasis on cardio as well. So the weight on the bar isn't as much as it usually is, but the amount of volume that I'm getting per training session, per week, and the frequency of training is at a higher level of frequency. And the training method I was using previously used to allow me to express my imposter syndrome in a different way because I would have weights on the bar upwards of 80-ish%, and I would do AMRAPs with those, so I'd still feel strong all the time. But the new methods that are coming out, the age of the lighter lifter, is showing a different kind of approach towards the training. And I'm following this new kind of wave of training and programming. So it's a little different than what I'm used to. And now the methods that are being utilized is showing that an expression of a high level of volume leads to a more efficient and more pronounced expression of strength. Basically, volume builds totals. So I'm going from the old school method of block periodization to this kind of new higher volume levels of training. So the weight on the bar is never really that big or that intense that I used to train with. And that would be fine if the weights were moving the way that I feel like they should be moving. And that's where a little bit of the imposter syndrome is sneaking in. Because I used to have AMRAPs on program pretty frequently, at least one AMRAP a week. And with this new program, I don't have AMRAPs on program. There's different variables that we're playing with, where there's the number of sets, number of reps, and the amount of rest period that I'm taking in between sets. And additionally, I'm not taking deloads as frequently as I was, and I'm training more frequently in training every week. So the expression of strength that I'm able to exhibit is vastly different than the level of expression of strength with the levels of fatigue that I used to train with, as opposed to now where I have an increasingly amount of fatigue. I haven't taken a true deload since about November, since I started with my new coach. So I'm not able to truly assess where my strength is, where I'm at, how strong I quote unquote feel, because I've never operated or tested my strength under the levels of fatigue that I currently have. And this leads to a phrase that I've heard a couple times in circles of top lifters that I never truly understood until I switched training styles to the one that I'm currently using. And that is that you only have to be strong when you're on the platform. That's one of those phrases that you hear and you think, yeah, I understand what they're saying with this. And then you kind of start to experience it and you're like, wow, what I thought was true was far from what was true when it came to this expression. And the reason that it works all boils down to the idea of adaptation. The idea is that if you put your body into a situation where you need to overcome a high level of stimulus, your body is going to end up adapting to that stimulus by getting stronger. So by increasing your fatigue levels to an absurd amount, you're going to put your body in a state of adaptation where it's going to adapt to the amount of training that you're doing a lot better than previously. So if you have two workouts, but your level of fatigue is higher in one as opposed to the other, the workout where you have the higher level of fatigue is going to be the one that creates more growth and adaptation as opposed to the other training day. So by continuously increasing the amount of fatigue that you have in your system and only reducing volume in order to prevent injury, you'll end up with a higher level of adaptation to the stimulus and a lot more strength gains in the long run. And then when it comes time to compete, you end up overcoming that level of fatigue by recovering and resting, and you're going to be able to express the amount of adaptation, the amount of strength gains that you acquired over the course of training a little bit more, because you'll have accumulated more muscle growth in that level of fatigue in that adaptation period, and you'll end up being stronger because of it. So really the only time that you're ever truly recovered and are able to express your strength at a maximal level is when you're preparing for a meet and you step onto the platform. Basically, the only time that you're going to be strong is when you're on the platform, which is extremely annoying because it allows the imposter syndrome to set in real nice and deep like. Because when you're in that period of adaptation to the stimulus of high levels of fatigue, you're going to feel like you've been hit by a bus 20 times over. And everything's going to feel like a struggle to express any sort of strength that you're used to. And the catch is, the man behind the curtain, is that unless you've repeated the same sort of block with the same level of fatigue, the same amount of stress in your life, at work, at home, whatever, you'll be attempting to express your strength at different levels of fatigue that you've never tried to express your strength at before. So your regular feeling of strength is not going to be there, and the imposter syndrome sure does like to rear its ugly head when you're feeling like that. So though it's hard to kind of wrap your head around I'm not getting weaker because the weights are not moving as fast. The weights that are on my back, in my hands, are not as high as they used to be. The levels of fatigue that I'm feeling makes me feel like I'm about to blow chunks of my colon out of my butthole. You need to be able to develop a mental adaptation to the level of stress that the training is going to put on you, and fully understand what the program is doing for you, not just trusting the process, but understanding the process all on its own. So if you're not on the platform, you're going to end up feeling like garbage, and you're not going to be able to express the strength that you've built up to that point. Unless you're fully recovered and your fatigue levels are at an all-time low. If you're competing at a high level with maximum amounts of effort on the platform, you're never going to really be able to touch those numbers unless you are recovered for that in a platform setting. And it's kind of hard to do the mental gymnastics required to feel positive about your training when it's feeling bad, when it's going like garbage. But when it's going perfectly according to plan, it's going to feel like that. You're going to feel overwhelmed. The imposter syndrome's going to set in. And you got to come to peace with that, because the only time you're really going to be strong and feel strong is when you're on the platform. And that's exactly how I'm feeling in this training block. My weight is way down. My training percentages are pretty far down. We're 18 weeks out, so we have a lot of time to build up the amount of volume, the amount of weight that we're able to put on the back and put up a pretty decent meet. But the amount of fatigue that I'm carrying around with me in the current training cycle is far beyond any amount of fatigue that I've ever had in my system at any point in my training. So it's kind of hard to determine where I'm at strength-wise. So I'm able to kind of understand the mental gymnastics required in order for myself to feel comfortable with not being strong unless I'm on the platform. It's very frustrating, and I'm doing battle with the imposter syndrome in my training right now. Like, I'm getting a little kind of, I don't want to say peeved or depressed, but I'm not as on point with my mentality going into this training block currently. But going forward, kind of understanding why I'm having the feelings that I'm feeling right now, and being able to develop my relationship with the training and the levels of fatigue and my expression of strength, because I understand what's going on in the training block, is going to allow me to do those leaps and bounds in my strength and be able to express my strength when it's finally time to get down to it. So I hope this video helps you understand the ways that you're feeling about your training, trusting the process, but not just trusting the process, understanding the process as well, and being able to go forward and understand, I feel this way because this is the way that the training block is going. This is what my coach wants me to feel. A lot of coaches aren't going to be good at expressing, hey, you're going to feel this way. You're going to have a lot of fatigue built up, but understanding that's where you're at and why you're feeling the way that you are is going to be really important in cultivating the amount of strength gains that you're going to need to PR at your next meet. So thanks for watching. 18 weeks out from the American Pro, we're going to put on a spectacular show. We're going to do really well despite not feeling super swell right now. So if you like the video, like, send it to your mom. She misses me. Subscribe, pet your dog for me. Tell your mom I said hi too.